Today, I've got something a little special for you. Today, we're going to be covering the newest Unearthed Arcana Wizards of the Coast has dropped on the Psion class. Now, this isn't, the first time that they've tried to introduce the Psion class. I don't normally cover Unearthed Arcana, but I thought, given the feedback that you guys have given me, this would be a fun thing to do. And I can kind of tell you what I think of the class and the things overall from it. Now, this is going to be probably a 4-part series on this Unearthed Arcana. There's a lot of things to cover. In this video, I'm going to be doing the class itself. In the next one, I'm going to be doing the subclasses. Then I'll talk about the new feats, and then I'll talk about the spells. So we're going to break it down into 4. I'm going to try to do these faster than my normal weekly release date because I believe the feedback on this opens up this week. So I'm going to try to at least get the subclasses out pretty quickly. So let us jump into this. And if you haven't been here before, my name is Nathan. I make content about D&D typically about once every week to 2 weeks. So if you like what you see, this is a good time to subscribe. Speaking of which, as of the time I'm recording this, we are at 381, 382 subscribers. I mainly make these videos for fun because I enjoy it. I've never made any money off the channel, nor is that something I need the channel to do, but it would be pretty cool. And then my next goal is to hit 500, so that's kind of the point where YouTube recognizes you as a real channel. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and it would help me out a lot. Thanks. All right. So here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to talk about what the Psion is supposed to be, kind of what the fantasy of it is supposed to be. Then we'll go through all the features of the core class, including their psionic disciplines, which are kind of like a sorcerer's meta magic. We'll do some brief coverage on the core class spell list, and then I'll kind of give a summary of my initial thoughts on the class. And again, coverage on subclasses is going to be in the next video. So when I'm evaluating this class, there's a few main things I'm going to be looking at. The first one is going to be the power level and the balance of the class. Now this is both between this new Unearthed Arcana Psion class, 2 other classes already in the game, as well as between the individual features of the class. Oftentimes with things like this, some of the features are pretty weak, some of them are pretty strong, and so I will kind of point out, in my opinion, which ones are strong and which ones are weak. I also want to evaluate how well does the class capture the thematics that it's supposed to do. How well does it, fulfill the fantasy. I'll talk about how complex and difficult this class might be to play. And then just a general gist of, do I think this class is going to be fun? So, jumping in, what is a Psion? So a Psion is a character who uses the power of their mind. Think like classic psychic powers like telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance. Also included in here are kind of mind over matter type concepts where your mental willpower boosts your physical abilities. Now, this isn't the first time that Wizards of the Coast has tried to introduce psionics into D&D. They've been around for quite a while, even I think since like 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. We also already have kind of, I would say, 4 subclasses that are psionic in nature in the Player's Handbook already, in the 2024 Player's Handbook, including the Psi Warrior, the Soul Knife, the Aberrant Sorcerer, and I would also say the Great Old One Warlock kind of fit into this category. Psionics were actually, a pretty competent thing in 4th edition. They had a whole kind of player's handbook dedicated to them, and I will be talking a little bit more about that, but they did actually successfully implement them in 4th edition, although I know a lot of you didn't actually play 4th. All right, so class features. Here is our core table. So their primary ability is going to be intelligence. They have a d6 hit dice, are proficient in intelligence and wisdom saves. They get 2 skill proficiencies, simple weapons, no armor. And as you can see, these core class features are very similar to Wizard. You got no armor, matching hit dice, matching saves, and one of the things you can probably immediately tell with a d6 hit dice and no armor is that this class is not very durable. Here is our kind of core table of all their class features. As you can see, it's pretty broad. We have, you can see that they're a full caster, as well as they also have the energy dice system that Psi Warrior and Soul Knife have. And the number of dice that you can see in their table there, it's basically twice your proficiency bonus that you can see in that second column from the left. If you were, a pure class character. So if you multi-class, you will slow down your energy dice progression. One of the things that I do find a little bit odd here compared to other full caster classes is most other classes that are full casters get additional cantrips at level 4 and level 10. And we can see here that we get one at 10 and 14. That just seems a little odd to me. Additionally, this class has 5 ability score improvements at the normal intervals, so 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19. I'm not going to cover those as we go forward, but just know that they have a standard, ability score improvement schedule. All right, features at level 1. First up is their spellcasting. Now, this is a pretty standard spellcasting feature. There isn't really anything outside of the normal here. They swap out their spells much like a sorcerer or bard. So you pick their spells when you level up, and you can swap out one then. So no long rest swapping like a cleric or a druid or a wizard. This class overall is going to be relatively, I think they're the most similar to sorcerers, and we'll see that more as we go forward. But here is the kind of unique thing about the Scion spellcasting feature, and it's what I've highlighted here. So psionic spellcasting, when we cast a Scion spell, so it has to be off our list, that spell doesn't require any verbal or material components, even if it normally includes V or M in its components cost, except you do have to provide material components if they have a cost or they are consumed. So interesting thing here, this means that you can cast spells while under the effect of a silent spell because you don't need to provide verbal components. If you take the hide action, casting a spell won't break your hide action invisibility because you're not casting a spell with a verbal component. So there's some potential synergy with rogue if you want to multi-class that way. And you also potentially can't be counterspelled if you cast a spell that doesn't have somatic components, because counterspell can only be used if you see someone cast a spell with verbal, somatic, or material components. So there's some potential interesting things there. That makes sense, given one of the fantasies of this class is I, cast with the power of my mind, and you don't necessarily see it. All right, next feature is Psionic Power, and this is their kind of energy dice feature. We start out with a couple ways to use our energy dice. The saving throw of the energy dice is your class spell save DC, so it'll be based off your intelligence. We get all of our energy dice back on a short rest, on a long rest, and importantly, we get back 1 on a short rest. So the two features that we get as a base ways to use our energy dice, first we get telekinetic propel. So what this does, as a bonus action, we choose one larger, smaller creature that we can see within 30 feet. And this can be an ally, and then we roll an energy dice. So this is the interesting thing, is that this feature is variable, and the target must succeed on a strength save. If they're an ally, they can willingly fail this if they want to, and then they're going to be pushed or pulled in a straight line from us 5 times the number that we roll. So at level 1, we have a D6 energy dice. This will be anywhere from 5 to 30 feet. And we only expend the energy dice if the target fails the save. Now, an interesting thing here, it's pretty poorly worded. It says, they're pushed or pulled straight away from you. Getting pulled straight away from you doesn't quite make sense, but I'm pretty sure the intention is you move them in a straight line. Now, one of the interesting things here is if you start to involve elevation and get into 3 dimensions. So let's say that you are flying 30 feet above the ground. You fly above an enemy. If you pull them up to 30 feet directly toward you, that'll be in the air and they will fall. So one of the things that this class is going to have that's going to have some synergy as a whole is if you have a way to fly, the core class eventually will get a way to do that. Some of the subclasses have ways to do that. If you can think in 3 dimensions with this class as written, you can squeeze a little bit more power out of it. And that is a little... maybe that's a balance concern. I'm not sure how much a little bit of falling damage and automatically applying the prone condition quite a bit. But that is something I noticed with this class that is an interesting thing and could be a potential balance issue. The next feature that we can do this is telepathic connection. So by default, this gives us a passive telepathy range of 5 feet, which is very minimal compared to other telepathy options in the game. As a bonus action, we can roll our dice, expend it, and for a number of minutes equal to our Psion level, we increase the range of our telepathy by 10 times the number rolled. I don't think this feature is very good. For the most part, you're probably not going to be using this unless you're a very specific subclass that needs this feature. I don't know why the range is so small. I feel like the base range could be like 30 or 50. But, I'm going to leave some feedback on this. I don't think this particular option is very strong compared to telekinetic propel. Next up, they have a feature called Cell Telekinesis, and we just know Mage Hand. So this is in addition to the 2 cantrips we already get from the core class, and we can cast it without somatic components. And remember, we don't need verbal or material either, so that we don't need any components at all to cast this, and it's going to be invisible. So a nice potential bonus there. The next feature that we get is at level 2. Now, Psionic Disciplines is listed before this, but I'm going to cover that after this. So we get a feature called Psionic Modes. So as a bonus action, we can choose either attack mode or defense mode, and we get those benefits for 1 minute, and we can use this twice per long rest. So this has its own resource pool. So now we have 3 different resources. We have spell slots, we have psi dice, and we have mode charges. This is kind of like this class's version of innate sorcery. So you can go into attack mode. This gives you, it makes it so that your damage from weapon attacks and your sign spells and your sign features ignores resistance to psychic damage, which is okay. There aren't really that many enemies in the game that are actually resistant to psychic damage. And then in addition, we can expend a psi dice to re-roll a number of damage dice up to our intelligence modifier. I'm not sure this is really worth using a dice on. It's not going to be that much of a damage increase on average, but it maybe could be useful. Defense mode gives us resistance to psychic damage, which probably isn't going to be the most useful. But the big thing here is if we fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma save, we can take a reaction and roll an energy dice and add the number to the saving throw, potentially turning a failure into success. I think of these 2 features, defense mode is more useful. That said, I don't think you'll need to activate your attack or defense mode in every combat unless you have like a subclass feature that depends on it. I don't think it's overall that useful, and if I was going to use it, I would probably favor defense mode. All right, next up is Psionic Disciplines. So this is going to give us 2 more ways to use our energy dice. We could only use 1 discipline each turn and only once per turn unless otherwise noted. We could swap out disciplines on a level up, and we gain 2 more at level 10 and level 17 in the class. So this is basically like the Scion's version of meta magic. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, and I've kind of grouped them up into 3 main groups. So the first group of disciplines are what I would call the skill boosting disciplines. So we have Devilish Tongue, Expanded Awareness, and Tactical Mind. All of these, there's a particular group of skills, and when you take the action associated with using one of those skills, we can expend a dice and roll it and add it to the number. So Devilish Tongue works with influence, influence works with deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion, and animal handling. Those are all charisma or wisdom skills, may not be our best. This one is probably the weakest of these 3. The next one is Expanded Awareness, which does it for search. Search covers insight, medicine, perception, and survival. All of those are wisdom skills. I would say this one is better than Devilish Tongue, but it's really going to depend on who's in your party. And the last one boosts the study action. And study includes Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, and Religion. And all of these are intelligence skills, which align with the main attribute of your class, and some of their skill proficiencies also align with these. Of these 3, I think this one is the best. But that said, they all could be useful depending on your character and what other characters you have in your party. And these ones are just kind of, I would say, generally useful. The next group here, there's 4 that these all do something special associated with spells of certain schools. So we have Biofeedback, which gives you temporary hit points when you cast a Psion, Necromancy, or Transmutation spell. We have Destructive Thoughts, which allows us to do damage with a Conjuration or Evocation Psion spell if the target passes their save against it. We have Id Insinuation, which this one costs 2 dice instead of 1. But what this does is if we do Enchantment or Illusion, we can subtract 1 roll of an energy dice from their saving throw. Then we have Swift Precognition, which when we cast Abjuration or Divination with the casting time of an action, we can change the casting time into a bonus action by spending a number of dice equal to 1 plus the spell's level. So this will be 1 dice for a cantrip, 2 dice for a first level spell, and so forth. Of these 4, and as we'll see from the Psion spell list later, I would say Id Insinuation is the best. That said, it is expensive. So one of the things that Psion has is they have a whole bunch of psychic spells. Almost all of those are enchantment or illusion. Like I would say 80+% of your good spells for combat are going to be from these schools. Swift Precognition, interestingly, works with True Strike because it's a divination option. So you might be wanting to use that if you want to boost your damage. I would say that one is probably the second best. The third best I'm gonna say is Biofeedback, interestingly, specifically because there's some transmutation spells like Jump and that kind of thing you can cast on yourself. and you can buff yourself at the same time. There's basically very few like necromancy options or offensive options here with biofeedback, so it's probably going to be buffing yourself when you use a transmutation spell that doesn't already give you temporary hit points. But it doesn't have many valid spell targets. And then I would say Destructive Thoughts is probably the worst. There's very few spells here that actually are from those schools and provide a saving throw when you cast it. And getting a little bit of damage, the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier, is really not that great, and I don't think it would be worth spending a dice on. So there's a lot of range of power on these. Insinuation is very good, and Destructive Thoughts is probably pretty bad. So I think the ones that are limited to schools, Psion doesn't really get, potentially need to be reworked or made better in order to be brought in line with the ones that line up with the spells they have that are actually good. And finally, the last group, these are kind of reaction options or kind of more miscellaneous ones. So the first one is Ego Whip. Basically, when an enemy provokes an opportunity attack from us, we can kind of psionically lash them. They make a save, and if they fail, their speed is reduced by 10 feet, and they subtract the number rolled from their next damage roll, and the die is only expended if the target fails the save, which is nice. This one is okay. Given the class might want the Warcaster feat, I don't think this one is really that great. Very situational pick. Next one is an Errant Aim. This lets us roll our energy dice and add it to an attack roll that misses, potentially turning a miss into a hit. And the dice is only expended if we actually make the attack hit. This one is nice, but that said, there are very few silence spells, and signs in general, you aren't going to make attack rolls with the exception of one of the subclasses. So I don't think this is really good unless you're using that specific subclass or potentially a multi-class. It's very good on the right build, but for the most part, I don't think most Psions would want to use this. The next one is Psionic Backlash. So this one is very powerful. Immediately after a creature we can see hits us with an attack roll, we can take a reaction to expend 1 dice, but then we roll 2, and we subtract the total from their attack roll. And in addition, we force them to make a wisdom save, and if they fail, they take psychic damage equal to the amount that we rolled. So remember how we said Psion was squishy and has, relatively poor armor class? This can potentially boost your AC by quite a bit. At this level, it's an average of -7 to the attack roll, which is way better than shield, although it does only work against 1 attack roll. But this is probably something that you are going to want. That's probably a must-take given the poor defenses of this class, and I think it's quite good. The last one is Psionic Guards. This one is the only one in this list that bypasses the 1 discipline per turn thing. At the start of our turn, we can expend a dice to give us immunity to Charmed and Frightened and advantage on intelligence saves, and it also ends Charmed and Frightened on us. This one is really situational, but when you need it, like if you got frightened by a dragon's frightful presence, it's really good. So this is one that I see more as a luxury pick. It's very powerful in the right situation, but other than that, doesn't do anything. So those are all the Psionic disciplines. There's a pretty wide range of power. I think Psionic Backlash and Insinuation are the ones I would probably pick for most Psion builds as my first 2. All right, next up, level 3. We get our subclass. So the subclasses are the Metamorph, the Psywarper, the Psykinetic, and the Telepath, and I'm going to be covering those in the next video. The Metamorph is kind of a mind over matter, so we use our powers to change our body. The Psywarper is focused on teleporting themselves and others. The Psykinetic is telekinetic, and the Telepathic, the Telepath has telepathy. The subclasses for this class give you features at levels 3, 6, 10, and 14, and the subclasses also have their own spell list. For spells that are always prepared from spell level 1 to level 5, and they also usually have some ways to spend your energy dice. So there's quite a lot of features in these, and again, we'll talk about these in the next video. Moving on to level 5, we did get the ability score improvement at level 4, but I already talked about that. So at level 5, we get this feature called Psionic Restoration. So what this does is on a short rest, we can regain up to half our maximum energy dice, rounded down. I don't know why it says rounded down. As you saw from the table, the number is always even, but that's okay. And then we can only do this extra restoration once per long rest. So on this short rest that we use this, we can recover half our max plus 1 because we get back 1 every short rest from our base feature. So it's 1 otherwise if this is down. So this is pretty good. I don't think you'll really have too much of a problem having energy dice at this level. Assuming that you get a short rest, you should be able to use them relatively freely. Moving on to level 7, when we roll initiative, we can expend a hit point dice and regain a psionic mode. So now we potentially have a 4th resource that we're going to be using. So we have spell slots, psi dice, attack defense mode charges, and now our hit dice are potentially going to fuel our class features. In addition, when we roll 1 or more psionic energy dice, we can expend 1 hit dice and treat any roll of 1, 2, or 3 on those energy dice as a 4. The first thing to regain uses of modes, I don't think this is very good unless you're a subclass that specifically needs to use attack defense mode. I don't think you're going to be using those most of the time, and I don't think you'll need to spend hit dice to get them back. Although that said, spending a hit point dice to get back, say, defense mode to boost your saves is potentially good. Now, the second one here, to be able to not be able to roll below 4 on an energy dice is actually really good for those features that have a lot of variability, namely something like telekinetic propel. So now our minimum is always going to be 20 feet, or psionic backlash. Now the minimum boost to our armor class is going to be +8, essentially. It's going to be subtracting 8 from that attack roll. This feature is actually quite good in that regard. Spending a single d6 hit dice to make an attack miss is going to be worth it pretty much most of the time with psionic backlash, assuming you took that discipline. And now we just jump straight to level 20 is when the next class feature is. So what this does is called Enkindled Life Force. Once per turn, when we expend a psionic energy dice and roll it for a psion feature or a psionic discipline, we can expend 2 hit point dice to roll 2 additional psionic energy dice and add the numbers to the total. You can get really big pushes out of telekinetic propel. I think this feature is generally good, but it is another feature that uses our hit dice. And I know one of the things on this class that I researched a little bit is that historically the Psion did use their hit point dice to kind of fuel their abilities. I feel like in a way using the hit dice is a little bit out of place on this class. You just suddenly start to get it at level 7, and that's the only thing that uses it until level 20. Not that it's not powerful, but it does increase the complexity of the class, and I'm not sure how much it feels in line with everything, given that it comes online late and we don't have many features that actually are going to use our hit dice. That said, this is still potentially quite good, and the power of this really varies depending on how good your features are that you use energy dice, so it's going to vary from subclass to subclass, and depending on what disciplines you took. But I do think it is good. All right, let's move on and cover their spell list pretty quickly here. I'm not going to deep dive into any of the new or changed spells here, although we'll kind of briefly mention them. Looking at their cantrips, Blade Ward is a potentially good option because, as we know, our defense is bad. We have 3 damage cantrips in Mind Sliver, Telekinetic Fling, and True Strike. Telekinetic Fling is a new spell. I would say it's pretty mediocre as far as a cantrip goes. In terms of the first level spells, you look at these here, they have a lot of good utility rituals like Comprehend Languages, Detect Magic, Identify. They also have a lot of good kind of psychic spells. So you've got things like Command, Dissonant Whispers, Sleep, Tasha's Hideous Laughter. You see Jump and Longstrider on there. So they've got some potential mobility enhancers, Featherfall. Notably Mage Armor, you're probably going to want that on this class because our armor is trash, and that's pretty much the only way we have to boost our AC. So I'd say the first level spells are pretty solid. The cantrips are kind of mediocre. Moving on to levels 2 and 3, there's lots of control and utility here. An interesting option you can see on second level spells there is the Silence spell. If we cast a silent spell, it'll prevent other creatures from casting spells with verbal components, but our spells don't have verbal components because of our core spell casting feature. So that's an interesting option there. There's a lot of rituals here. You can see there's a lot of concentration spells. The third level spell list is pretty short, but they do have some nice spells in like Fear, Fly, Hypnotic Pattern. Summon Astral Entity is potentially a nice summon for damage per round. Telekinetic Crush is a new spell. It's kind of a damage plus debuff. It provides the prone condition. They've got some nice second level options and things like Suggestion. So again, pretty decent, solid spell list. They have Invisibility as well. So these are things like you want a lot of them, but you're not going to be able to get all of them. So again, lots of control and utility and that kind of thing. Looking at levels 4 and 5, the lists get shorter, but there are a lot of solid options here. Arcane Eye is a great spell. Banishment is a great spell. Confusion is a pretty great spell. Dimension Door is a great spell. Greater Invisibility, I really like that one. Polymorph is very powerful. Raltham Psychic Lance is also good. Summon Aberration is another good control spell. The 5th level's, it's got some really nice summon spells. It's got Synaptic Static. Rarity's Telepathic Bond is a very potentially useful spell. They have a lot of good ones here, but it's not as good as I would say the Wizard's spell list, and I don't think it's as good as the Sorcerer's spell list either. But there are a lot of cool information gathering options here available as well, kind of leading into that clairvoyance aspect. And I have just put all the levels 6 through 9 spells up here. The list is pretty short. They don't have a whole lot of bangers for the super high level spells. They do have some nice things like Mass Suggestion, Force Cage, even though it got nerfed, Reverse Gravity, Power Word Fortify. I like quite a bit. They've got Maze. Befuddlement is pretty good. Foresight, Psychic Scream is new. Time Shape Change. So there are powerful spells here for sure. Overall, I feel like the spell list is good, although I wouldn't say it's great. And you can see there's a lot of enchantment or illusion spells on this list. All right, so my initial thoughts. First of all, I feel like Wizards of the Coast played it relatively safe with this class design. They pretty much used existing mechanics in spell slots and side dice. Some of the features need their wording cleaned up, not just in the core class, but also in the subclasses, which we'll see in the next video. I think it would have been cool if they would have gone a little bit outside the box with this to kind of make it something new and exciting. Although I understand kind of why they played it safe, I think it probably gives them the best chance of getting good feedback on it, and will make it a little bit, easier to play because it's similar to things we already have. Next thought, there are definitely some options that look much better than others. If you think about the Psionic Disciplines, things like Id Insinuation and Psionic Backlash stand out quite a bit over all the other options. Defense mode generally looks a lot better than attack mode. Telepathic Connection just kind of looks sucky. I don't see why you'd use it for the most part. So the kind of balance between some of those features, I would say, needs to be looked at a little bit. I think the bad options need to be, made better. Next thing, this class is pretty complex. You have a lot of working pieces. You have a lot of things that are similarly worded, but work in different ways, like spend 1 dice but roll 2, spend 2 dice but roll 1, 4 different resources between spell slots, attack defense mode charges, side dice, it uses your hit dice eventually. There's a lot of interconnected things and resource management involved there, and you're also very squishy. That said, I do think it would be pretty fun for an experienced player. Next thought, a lot of the class features are pretty powerful once you start to fly. For example, Telekinetic Propel, you can lift people off the ground and drop them. That's a bonus action, doesn't require any spells or concentration or anything. And we're going to see this more with some of the subclasses, especially the Psywarper is quite powerful if you can lean into getting some elevation. Next thought, I kind of found this class a little bit to be thematically off, and let me explain. So in a lot of classic psionic fantasy, so you think about superheroes, you think about someone like Charles Xavier or Jean Grey, or Nightcrawler, or even like Stephen King things, with like Carrie or Firestarter and that kind of thing. Typically, a classic psionic mind powers character typically has kind of one of they usually only have 1 power, maybe 2. One of them is kind of a low level. And one of the things I saw with the Psion is with just the core class features and the spell list, a Psion basically has access to all of the mental powers at the same time. So, mind over matter, teleporting, telekinesis, telepathy, clairvoyance. Each of the subclasses is supposed to like do one of these things, but a core Psion already does them. Not the subclasses make you do them a little better, but given the fact that the core class already does it, it's not necessarily bad, but for me it kind of hurts the fantasy. I know you could just not pick options that don't, lean into your choice of powers, and if you wanted to make a kind of a Mary Sue Psion who had all the powers, you totally could with this class as written. But that just feels a little bit off to me in that the core class already does everything that each of the subclasses are supposed to do. So that was just something I noticed. And final point, this class has a lot of potential boosts you can do from a little bit of efficient multi-classing or the right origin feats. So namely, you take Magic Initiate Wizard as your origin feat to get Shield to help you patch up your defenses. If you dip into a class like Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, any class that gives you like medium armor and shields solves a whole bunch of the defensive issues of this class very efficiently. Additionally, if you pick a Flying Race to take advantage of fall damage mechanics, it's going to work very well mechanically for this class. So, thanks for watching. This has been our initial overview on the Unearthed Arcana Psion that came out this week. Again, I'm going to try to release the videos pretty quickly for this. I'm going to try to get the subclass one out in the next couple days. But overall, hey, what did you think of the Psion? Please let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'm going to be dropping the next videos on this pretty quickly. Once again, my name is Nathan. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and I hope, this Psion class is, I would love to see this published, although I do think it needs some changes. So I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.